Yeah, one of the modernization pathway is like porting your legacy .NET Framework applications to .NET Core or .NET 5. And we will dive deep into that topic today. So from the agenda perspective, we'll start with the story of .NET, and we'll look into why we should be porting the application to .NET 5. Next, we'll describe what the porting assistant tool is, and we'll cover how to use porting assistant to convert your current .NET Framework code to .NET Core or .NET 5. And then we'll actually spend the majority of the time in this session, going through the demo, where I'll take an existing ASP.NET MVC application that is leveraging Entity Framework 6, and I'll convert it to over .NET 5 and use Entity Framework Core 5.0. And then we'll, recap with some final thoughts. So just a quick overview of how .NET evolved over the years. Most of you experienced .NET developers would already be knowing this. It all started in 2002 with the release of .NET Framework 1.0 by Microsoft. And they continued enhancing .NET Framework till around 2012 when they released .NET Framework 4.5. And as you all know, .NET Framework runs only on Windows platform and it's proprietary. This is when Microsoft thought of investing in a cross-platform and open source version of .NET, which they called .NET Core, and released .NET Core 1.0 in 2016. And as you can see in the timeline, graph till since 2016, the majority of the focus has been on .NET Core, and there has been only one minor release for the .NET Framework, that is 4.8. And now that .NET 5 has been launched last year in November, Microsoft will no longer be adding new features to the Windows-only .NET framework. Yeah, while Microsoft will still be issuing the bug fixes or security patches for foreseeable features, but all the future innovations will be occurring on the .NET, which we call as a unified platform now. So why we should be porting our applications to .NET 5? Like as we discussed in the last slide, .NET is the future. .NET Framework is kind of deprecated. But also, you may be interested in running your applications on containers. And let's face it, the Linux containers ecosystem is just been out there longer, and it's more mature than the Windows container ecosystem. So the .NET 5 or the .NET Core can be containerized into Linux containers and can be run on Linux containers. The next is we may want to leverage the cloud native applications, we want to build serverless architectures using services like AWS Lambda. Currently, Lambda supports only .NET Core or .NET 5 runtime, so they're unable to run .NET Framework like Windows-only applications on that. Next, what we have seen in working with many of our customers, that they simply find or achieve a better performance when they're running applications on the Linux operating system instead of Windows boxes. And then we get to the more practical ones, where when you're running on Linux, you don't have to worry about the Windows licenses. So you're able to save quite a bit of money while you're operating your workloads. Now, even though .NET Framework and .NET Core have a lot in common, especially in terms of the programming languages and many aspects of code development, but porting existing applications from .NET Framework to .NET Core has its own challenges. The first problem comes from the fact that many NuGet packages are still not available on the both sides, and it makes the process very hard. There are many NuGet packages that are exclusively available for .NET Framework, and that makes any .NET Framework application using those packages incompatible with .NET Core or .NET 5. And that leads to another problem, which is a difficulty in assessing whether an application is compatible for porting to .NET 5 or not, and how much effort is required to make it compatible. And without a proper assessment, it is difficult to plan the porting or gauge the timeline required to complete the porting. So if any company has a legacy application, how to plan how much time the porting would take, that becomes difficult. And even when you start porting, there's a significant load of manual work that needs to be carried out. Even if you're following Microsoft's own porting guide to convert to .NET Core or .NET 5, there are a lot of manual steps you have to go through. You have to create new projects that are targeting the new runtimes. You have to reestablish all the cross-project dependencies and reacquire your NuGet packages. And then lastly, you got to copy all of your code into those projects. Well, this is where the porting assistant comes in. It is an open source tool. What it will do is it is going to scan your code. It'll analyze your existing solutions and projects. It will perform a compatibility assessment to make sure that it is going to be able to be ported over to .NET 5. It will also find out that the cross-project interdependencies, if there are any, and it's going to help you understand where you should focus your efforts first. It will tell you if you're using any NuGet packages that are incompatible with .NET Core or .NET 5 runtimes. And it will also tell you whether or not you're leveraging any API calls in the .NET Framework runtime that doesn't exist in .NET Core or .NET 5. And we'll look into all of it during the demo today. And when all of that assessment is done, when you can actually export the results of the assessment, just in case you want, like to take a snapshot of your progress to share it with, other stakeholders, or you want to build tools that you can, want to build automations based on that information. Then it'll help you to port the application to .NET Core or .NET 5, which we call as assisted porting. This is what I would like to, point out here is that it is not going to magically port your application. It does update this project files, like the CS-proj files. It is going to update the packages to the compatible versions. And sure, it does some code changes too, but still there will be manual work required to complete the porting. It reduces your manual work, and we will dive deep into what changes that are done automatically by this tool that reduces your work. So the feature is called as code translation feature that relies on the predefined set of rule and actions. It finds those patterns in the code and updates the code accordingly. You can find the details in the GitHub link that is there. It's going to identify like common issues or the usages of like entity framework or ASP.NET MVC, the legacy stuff, and make changes to the source code to reduce the manual work needed for the porting. Let's dive deep into that a bit. So let's say if you have an ASP.NET MVC application, which like most enterprises do generally have if they've been working on .NET. Then, using the porting assistant, what changes that it will be doing automatically is that it is going to create a CS-proj file, a .NET 5 compatible version of it. If you have worked on both the versions, you will know that there are a few differences, and you need not do them manually. The tool is going to do that automatically for you. And we'll look into that, what changes it does. It is going to update the namespaces, like it will remove the legacy namespaces. It will add the Microsoft ASP.NET Core MVC namespace. It is going to add the required template files, like the boilerplate code that comes when you start a new ASP.NET Core application, the program.cs, the startup.cs to start your application. All that is added when you are porting ASP.NET MVC legacy application to ASP.NET Core application. There are other code changes like interface declarations, so on and so forth. We'll look into that a bit. But yeah, you can find the full details in the GitHub URL there that I showed in the previous slide. And like most of the applications do have a database part of it, like they are connecting to database for interacting with the database. And if it is a bit of a legacy application, it will be either using Entity Framework or ADO.NET. So if your application has Entity Framework, then this porting assistant tool is going to add the NuGet package for the EF core. It is going to automatically update the namespace. It is also going to add this code of on-configuring method like to your DB context, which allows you to easily connect to your database. And then in case if you have ADO.NET, then it is going to update the needed packages. It is going to replace the system.data.sql client, which is the old namespace in the framework world, to the Microsoft.data.sql client, which is the .NET 5 compatible version. And in some cases, and it will based on where your actual connection string is saved in your existing project. When we port this to the new version, it is going to create an app settings file, and it is going to even copy your connection string in the new format, in the new formatted app setting.json file. So quickly, how to use the porting assistant. It's quite straightforward. You can download the desktop tool and you can install it on your local machine, developer local Windows machine. The download link is there in the resources section, which I'll share at the end of the presentation after the demo. Then you need to configure a few of the prerequisites, and few like 2 prerequisites that are listed here in this slide. There are a few other prerequisites that we can find in the documentation. But the main thing here is that you need to have the .NET version of your source project. Like, if your source project is currently in .NET Framework 4.5, you need to have that on your local machine so that it currently builds your local file, local project. And then your target version. Let's say if you're targeting .NET Core 3.1 or you're targeting .NET 5, then you need to have the target version installed on your machine. With that prerequisites set on your local machine, all you need to give is solution file as an input to the tool, and then it is going to scan your entire source code. It is going to assess the source code and provide you with the assessment result, and it will guide you through the porting steps, and we'll look that into the demo. And that's pretty much that I have to from the presentation perspective. Let's dive deep into our favorite part, that is the code. Let me also look, in case if there is any, questions, I'm not able to see, but let me quickly see. Okay, I don't see any questions as of now. So cool, let's look into the code. So the project that we'll be using is ASP.NET, a sample ASP.NET application. As you see, what I have done here is it's just a, a normal question, which is ASP.NET example, which is a web project. Then it has a project common, which has some of the data items there, and then we have data access layer. This has the models, and this is where you will be actually having the DB context to interact with the database. So it's a quite common pattern that we have in a MVC web applications. So if I run this okay, before running, I wanted to show the framework version of it, but I'll show the framework version of it once it runs. The framework version is 4.7.1. But yeah, let me first show the application here. Yep, it's running on the local host. And if you see, this is the simple, I just changed a bit of the UI and stuff, but it is the normal ASP.NET application, the blueprint that comes. But what I've done is that I've added this catalog to show a bit of database the connectivity. So it has connecting to a SQL server, local SQL server. I put that in the app data, the MDF file. I'm not connecting it to a hosted SQL server, connected to a local one. And it just to showcase the database interaction. So I can go ahead and change it to .9 and save. So this is a sample application, the MVC ASP.NET MVC application. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to show you the framework version. So this is on the project file. So this is a .NET Framework 4.7.1. And I have the data here in the app data. I have the MDF file where it is interacting with. And if you have worked on ASP.NET MVC, you will be able to recognize this is a common pattern that we have, web config, global ASICs, package config, so on and so forth. So today we are going to port this to the .NET 5, and we will be using the porting assistant tool. So let's look into the tool. So I have the tool installed on my system, and I have the prerequisites configured. You will be able to find all of that here in the documentation. And then we can get started. If you're doing it for the first time, it is going to ask you for a few settings, which you can change on later from here in the settings And the settings are like you need to provide an AWS name profile. I have it configured as a profile Prasad, so I added that. And then what is the target framework? So you can set the target framework as .NET. Let me show that. So you can set your target framework as .NET Core 3.1.0 or .NET 5. So I'm using .NET 5 for the purpose of this demo. So let's go back to the Get Started page. So if I get started here, I already have assessed a few of them, like Knob Commerce is a very famous open source e-commerce application. I have a MVC music store, but for today purpose, I'm going to assess a new solution. I created the solution that we looked into. So we are going to look into that. Okay, so here it is. I already have the Porting Assistant demo solution here. So all we need to provide as an input here, and this is important here, we need to have that solution accessible where the tool is, and you should be able to provide the solution file. You just need to provide the solution file and click on Assess here. So now when you click on Assess here, as you can see, all the assessment is in progress. It is going to take a few seconds to few minutes, depending upon how complex the project is, how big the project is. Like this one is not very big, so should not be taking a lot of time. But a project like Knob Commerce, which has a lot of projects, would be taking a bit of time. But let's see how much time it takes. But yeah, in the meantime, it is happening. Let me see if there are any questions in the chat. Okay, somehow I'm not able to access. Okay.
Yeah, we have got one in there, Prasad. I'll read it if that. Yeah. So from Stuart, Microsoft decided to release an update to EF6 6.3 that adds Net Standard 2.0 support and Linux support. Are there cases where with EF6 would be preferable to upgrading to EF Core?
There are cases where staying with EF6 would be preferable to upgrading to EF Core. Frankly, I'm not sure about this. There might be some cases in where if I see from the business perspective that it's like world is moving towards .NET 5. Even if we have the Entity Framework 6 and there's a Linux version, it will be supported for some time. If there is a resource crunch, or if we need to get to Linux way too faster, probably we might think about EF6. Otherwise, if it is a more of a long-term plan, then you might want to move to the EF Core, because that's where the majority of probably the contribution would be. I see there are more questions, and I see that the even the Porting Assistant demo has been successfully done. So let me take another question from the chat, and then we will park the questions for the end, so that we are able to complete the demo. So another question is, how does this Porting Assistant compare with Try Convert? We'll look into it right now. We will see that. But I think there's a question before that. Hold on. That question is then: is it same process for moving 3.1 to 5? This particular version that Porting Assistant is there, the source is .NET Framework to .NET Core or .NET 5. If you have a .NET Core 3.1 application, the tool currently, it is in the roadmap, but it does not currently support .NET Core 3.1 to .NET 5. Okay. What role did AWS play in porting of .NET app? AWS has provided this tool, and we'll talk about the whole code is open source and stuff towards the end of the session, and we can come back to this question if required. I think I'll pause the questions for now, and I'll get back to the demo, and we'll come back to the questions. I hope I'll not lose the count. I'm here at the Try Convert, or just below that. Sure, we'll come back to it. So I'm going to minimize that. Come back to the tool where the assessment is complete. And if you see in this screen, what all it's actually showing for this particular Porting Assistant demo is that there were 3 projects, as we have seen in the Visual Studio. The number of incompatible packages are 8 out of 30. So there are total 30 NuGet packages that are being used, and out of which 8 are incompatible. The incompatible APIs, and we'll dig deep into this, like there are 13 incompatible APIs out of the total 19. There are no build errors as such, and there are around 6 porting actions, and we'll talk about what exactly the porting actions are. So if we click into this and we look deeper into this, then so here if you see, it's the same overview, assessment overview that you are able to see on the main page. But if you want to go into more details, here are the 5 tabs, and we'll look into that. So the first tab, projects, it is going to show you the entire data for each project, like what framework version it is currently on, how many reference project it is, like if this project is dependent or like interdependent upon any other projects, how many are there, what are the incompatible packages per project, incompatible APIs per project, and what is the porting status, like the port actions, what is the porting status, whether it has been ported it or not. So we have an option to port one project at a time. I can select one project at a time and port it, or I can select all and port them, or I can like port solution at a port level. So we have that flexibility. It will depend upon how complex the project is. Like this one is fairly simple. We can think about putting all of them together. But something like NOP commerce, or if you have a very big monolithic legacy application, you might want to do it iteratively. Moving on to the next tab, project references. This is where it shows all the interdependencies between the project. So like ASP.NET example, the web project is dependent on data access and common. Data access layer is dependent only on the common. And if we have time towards the end, I'll show you the graph of NOP commerce, and you'll understand like how this can be really useful in like giving you the pointers of from where you should start your porting. Then let's go to NuGet packages. So all the NuGet packages are listed here with their version. That particular version is compatible or incompatible. If they are incompatible, they want to think about the alternative. That's where the more of the manual work would start. And then, yeah, so on and so forth. It's going to show you all of that along with the suggested replacements if there are any, and how many projects it has been used, how many source files it has been used, so on and so forth. Similarly, for the APIs, the entity, like all the APIs that has been called, like whether the APIs are entity framework APIs or Microsoft ASP.NET MVC API, and whether they are compatible or incompatible, all that is being shown, whether, in how many source files it is being used, how many calls are being made for that particular, so it makes you easy, in case that, if you are working and if you focus on, solving this one, so this is going to, like convert the majority of in one go, and so on and so forth. Coming to the source files, that particular view is also shown at the source file level. For example, in this build bundle config.cs, there are 3 incompatible APIs and so on and so forth. So let's look into the controller. So this is the controller. If I click here, it's going to open the actual source file, and it's going to show you 2 things. The first is the porting actions, which is like if this particular web namespace is going to be changed to this particular one, and the recommendation would work on x86, x64, and ARM32 and ARM64. So these are porting actions that the code is going to automatically change. Then there will be changes that will be like incompatible invocation. Like this is like not compatible. For example, HTTP not found is not compatible. That's what's going to show here, and this is where we will need to do the manual changes. Okay, so that's pretty much on the kind of the assessment, like of you can dig deep into these at the project level, at the project references level, or NuGet packages, API on the source files. It depends upon which pivot you would like to take and start from where. And then you can also export this assessment report. So all these details that we have shown here can be exported into a CSV file. And then if you want to share it with your stakeholders, or and if you want to create a detailed plan of like the effort estimation and so on and so forth, all that can be done. Or if you want to build any automations around it. So let's start by actually porting the solution. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to click on port project. Now here, when I port the project, it asks me for the location where I would like to save the ported project. There are 2 options. One, copy to a new location, which is more of a conservative approach. If you would like, want to have, a copy of your old source code as it is, and you want to have the new copy in a separate location, you can choose the folder. Or you have modify source in place, which is made like if you're using a version control like Git or some other version controls, so then you can modify source in place and you can look into the changes. I'll use this, and we'll look into the Git changes of what exactly the changes have been done. I'm going to click on save, and then it's going to show me the summary before I start the project, the porting. So it shows the selected projects. These are the selected projects that are going to be ported in, and the target framework, the current framework is this. The port settings, it is going to the destination, the same destination where my original code is. And then it's going to have it as the .NET 5, the target framework, which can be .NET 3.21 or .NET 5. It starts from the framework version to the newer version of .NET. NuGet package upgrades. So these are the NuGet packages, and it does show you, you can upgrade it to these versions. What are the current versions that are being used? So I've added these, just to showcase that these are the suggestions that are given. These will not be required. I'll remove them from the code. But yeah, if they have any NuGet packages, then it's going to show you, how to upgrade. It's going to give you a suggestion, but you can always change the, based on your requirement. If you want to go to a previous version, you can always go to a previous version. Let me see if they have, yeah. So you can always go ahead and have a previous version if you want, or a newer version if you want. I'll keep them as it is, and I'm going to click on the port. So on clicking the port, if you see here, the porting, this can take a few minutes, again, depending upon, how big the application is, what exactly, your application is doing and how complex it is. It is going to take that much time. I don't think it's going to take a lot of time, but still we'll see if we can take some questions in between that. Let me start from the top again. Okay, I think before I'm able to start the questions, it successfully ported, but hold on, I'll still try and take some question. I think I did this question, and then let me track and what we'll look into. What role does AWS play? Will come back. Is AWS account mandatory? Yes, it is. You can always opt out of sending any telemetry information to the AWS, and we'll look towards it in the FAQ sections. It requires so that all the API assessments all can be done, and then it will be able to send you the information. But you can always opt out of AWS accessing any of your data. Can you use this tool as a standalone app with a CLI? So, for example, to run it from a terminal without opening a GUI. So, as I said, these are open source, and you can always configure that open source the way you would like. You can have that project included in your project itself if you want, or in the roadmap we are adding extensions to the Visual Studio and other IDEs through which also you will be able to use. But as of now, today, it's a standalone app through which you will be able to use it. The rest are in a roadmap. And yes, we do love this feedback, because that's what, we get to know, what's the requirement from the developers is, and we are going to develop it accordingly. And as I said, it is an open source tool, so the contributions are more than welcome. I'll stop the questions there, and I'll go back to the demo now, and we'll come back to the questions. So in the demo, as you can see, it successfully ported 3 projects. Successfully ported 3 projects does not mean the porting is complete, or all your build errors has been successfully done in .NET 5 now. It means that the porting process is complete from the automation perspective. Whatever automation it was able to do, it has done. But now we need to do the manual steps, and we'll do that. From the stats perspective, it ported all the 3 projects. The number of incompatible packages now are reduced to 1. The number of incompatible APIs reduced to 0. We do have 3 build errors, and there are no porting actions. That means no automatic porting actions are still required to be done. So this is useful when, let's say you have like 27 projects here in Op Commerce and you're doing them iteratively. Then this particular stats would, will help you to see how the progress is going. So if I go into this, now you see these are the target framework for this have been updated from framework 4.7.1 to .NET 5.0. And then compatible packages and APIs stats have been changed, and the port status for them is ported. So now let's go to the source code and let's start doing manual changes. So it's going to ask you to reload the projects because CS proj files has been changed, and we'll look into what changes have been done in the CS proj files. So let's first reload all the projects. Okay. So now we had 3 projects. We'll start from the project which had least number of dependencies, and that is common CS proj. If you see the CS proj file now, if I hold on, if I format it, and I hope the font is right. If do you want me to, I think this will be too much. I think this is good. Target framework is 5.0. And as I said, these packages I just added to showcase. These are not required, at least in the common.cs, where we have only catalog item.cs, which is nothing more than just a model. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to remove all these package references. And that's it. This is our .NET 5.0 compatible CS proj file. And let me go ahead and build the common.cs. The build got succeeded. And this was a simple example. Now let's move on to a bit more complex, which is a data access. And again, here, if you see, let me format it. It has come to .NET 5.0. And we will look into, for this, we know only the .NET Entity Framework. We do not need the other APIs, the NuGet packages. So I'm going to remove them. So the CS proj file is fine. It is dependent only on one project reference, common CS proj. This looks good. Now what we're going to do is there is, as you see, if I go to the properties, there was assembly info which has been archived because this is not required now. Packages.config, the old version, it's not required now. So it has been archived. ASP.NET example context.cs. This is where there are changes, and if you see it is modified, let's look into what modifications has been done. So if you see here, the modifications that have been done is that system.data.entity has been removed and added. Microsoft Entity Framework core has been added. And by default, a constructor has been added. Then we have already and instead of having these, there is a on configuring method that has been added. Let's look into the normal file. We'll be able to look into that in a better way. Here it is, file. So this is how the file looks into. But as I said, the porting has been done in the best effort possible. It is not that it is complete. So we are going to do the changes. So you can see that it is unhappy about the constructor. So what we'll do is because this is mainly because in Entity Framework core they have changed it from the one that takes the name of the connection string to something that takes a DB context options object, and that will be the ASP.NET example. And let me make that changes here. So what it's going to do is that it's going to take DB context options, and in that it is going to take ASP.NET example context, and let me name that as options. And I'm going to pass down under, instead of the connection, like the string actual, I'm going to pass down under the options. Yep, and seems like that particular issue got solved. Here again, if you see, it is crying about system.data entity, and as we see that is not available, and we have entity framework core, so this is not required. DB set is now available in the entity framework core, so this should work, and this is great. And as you can see, it automatically added on configuring, which helps you with the options builder to get you the connection string and talk to database. And that's pretty much here. So my data access layer should be good. So let me try and rebuild it. So 2 succeeded with that. So the common got built and data access got built. So these were like, common was the straightforward porting, data access was low level effort. Let's look into a bit more effort changes with the web, which is ASP.NET example. Right. So at first, I'd like to show all the changes that it was able to do to the ASP.NET example. So let us open here ASP.NET example. To see here, for the scaffolding part, it has added the startup.cs and program.cs. This is where your program would be able to start. So it has automatically added these to your code, which are not present in the ASP.NET MVC application, but they are vital for ASP.NET core applications. Similarly, startup.cs, we'll come back to these files and make the necessary changes that are required. But if you see, the basic scaffolding, the boilerplate code is already been done, which reduces your manual effort greatly. Yeah, the packages.config has been removed. The global.ajax, which were the old ways to get start with your application. They have all been removed. CS_proj file. Let's look into the changes for the CS_proj file. Okay, it is saying it's unable to start the configuring compare tool for the CS_proj file. Strange, but that is fine. I can show you the CS_proj file directly here. Okay, so it seems like the demo gods are not, like they're not showering any love on me. But let's see. Okay, let me try and yeah, I'll try and first build it. I know it's not going to build, it's going to error on the ASP.NET. Detected package downgrade for diagnostic source. Let me open this now. Okay, so let me try and close this. Or let me open the dependencies here of the packages. And it has said that diagnostic source complaining. I'm going to delete that. This is not required here. So I'm going to remove that. Try to open this. Specified cast is not valid. I'm going to close and reopen the window. Let's see. My Visual Studio is starting up. If it does not work like this, then we are going to open the CS_proj file in the notepad and do the changes. We'll go the primitive way. Okay, it got opened. Let me format it and let me see if the Git version works of it. Yeah, now it works. So that was just the Visual Studio blip. Nothing wrong with the code, hopefully. But yeah, if you see on the left-hand side, you can see the like CS_proj file of the old version where we have these import projects which are not required in the newer versions. The target framework, you can see it has been updated to .NET 5.0. And then if you see like these project groups, all of that is not required in the latest version. So all that has been removed, and it has been made compatible to the CS_proj file. So if you see the number of lines on the left-hand side, it's a huge file compared to the the number of lines on your right-hand side. So I'll close the diff version. I'll go to the CS proj file here again. They said we will not be needing all of them. So I'm going to remove the ones that are not needed, which are like, yeah, I don't need any of them, but we will need a few of them, and let's try and add them. So one of them would be the build bundler minifier, which will be helping your client-side libraries to start, like client-side code. So I'm going to go ahead and add the NuGet package for that. Yeah, build bundler minifier. That should be good enough. And for even for the entity framework core, we are using the SQL Server. So let us add the SQL Server entity framework core. So here it is. I'm going to install that. So these are the only projects that I need packages, NuGet packages that I need for this project. So we will be good to start making the code changes. Okay, so I'm going to save this file, close this. And as you know, the client-side libraries are now, built in a different way in the latest versions. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to add the .NET 5 compatible version of it. I have created them before, so I'm going to add the existing items. So these are the scaffolding items that you get. So there are 3 files that I'm going to add. Startup program.cs is already added. I'm going to add libman.json, bundleconfig.json, and Docker file. We are not containerizing it, but by default, it was an old Docker file. So it was including the Windows version of it. This is going to help you build the Linux version of the container. So I'm going to add them. Yes, I can replace it. So now what I'm going to do then is I'm going to restore the client-side libraries. So it's going to restore all of these libraries. And as you can see in the news version, it has created nothing more than created a www root. This is where all your client-side libraries and then your CSS and fonts and images stay. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to move all of this into the newer structure. So yeah, we are good with that. Now let's start making the code changes. I think the project structure-wise, we have done all the changes that is required. We have added the packages. We have added the libman and like bundle config that need for the startup for the client side. And now we have restored the client side libraries, moved the folders to the www root folder. Now let's go to startup.cs and let's start making the changes. So here, if you see, like the dependency injection that we have, instead of using for the connection string, how we do is we use the di for the connection string. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to add that. So that is services dot add a DB context. Now I have the ASP.NET context here in the data. So I have the .NET example context. That's the DB context that we have. And for that, I'm going to I do a use SQL Server. I think I'll have to, yeah, add the NuGet package here. Yep. and then I can get the configuration through, like, I'll get the connection string. Reduce the font size a bit. I'll come back to. Yeah, hopefully that should do the trick. Yeah, we'll see if it complains. But yeah, then we can go to the controller part of it. Let me try and build this first and see how far have we reached with our build errors. Okay, so now let's go to the controller and start fixing the controller part, which is catalog item controller. Here it is complaining about the ASP.NET example DB context. So here, if you see, we should be using the DI part of it. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to add a constructor for the catalog item controller, and I'm going to inject the ASP.NET example context DB, and that's how we are going to get the connection, a string or the context. Okay, that part fixed. And now, yeah, as you see, it is complaining about the HTTP status code result. This is because now this has been replaced with the status code, which is like, the status code. And so let me do one thing. I'm going to find this pattern. I think it should be there at multiple places. And then let me here, and then replace it with the status code, and I'm going to cast it to the int, and that should hopefully do the trick. So if I replace, let's see, here it has 3 occurrences replaced, and then yeah, it stopped complaining about this particular error. Again, HTTP not found, it is complaining. If you remember, these are the errors that were shown in the porting assistant tool. So either you can look into the tool to, during the assessment phase, you can look there to actually assess the effort. And while, manually updating, it will be, yeah, it does require some experience and, like knowledge about what were there in the .NET framework, what is there in the .NET Core or .NET 5. And let's see if we have more of these. Yeah, we have another one here. And then, yeah, another one here. Okay, so this is done. Good enough. So let me try and build this. So let me see the version issue that we have here further. Oh, I'm using the preview version. That should not be the case. I should be using the latest version. So let me go and fix that, and probably that should fix it. Yeah, I think preview got released. packages, manage packages installed. Come on, please give me a stable version. Yeah, 5.0.3. That should do the trick, hopefully. Cool. So this is done. So we've done all the changes are required for the backend, but there are still few script errors that we will have to do, and let's try and do them quickly. So we are almost there. So from the scripts perspective, we'll start with the layout CSS/HTML, and as you can see, it is not liking the styles.render and the scripts.render, right? That's mainly because ASP.NET Core has realized that instead of having these styles as renders, we should be doing it more as a link. It's more of a link tag with a href. So let's go ahead and update that. So I'm going to update this with a link tag with a href, and similarly script render can be updated with a script tag. So that's a bit of a change between the old version and the new version. Similarly, if you look at towards the bottom of the screen, it's again not very happy about scripts render. So I'm going to update those with the scripts tag version of them. Yep. So it is with that fixed, and I have done this before, so I know exactly where the changes needs to be done. If you're doing it the first time, you might take a bit more time, but yeah, once you're used to these kinds of changes, you'll exactly know where the code changes needs to be done. And then we have a similar issue with the create.cshtml and edit.cshtml. If we go back to the end, wherever the script render is there, we need to update that to the scripts tag. So let me go ahead and do that here. Good enough. And then I'll do the same in the edit towards the end. And that's pretty much. So hopefully my front end is also fixed. But one last thing that we'll have to check, obviously, to connect to database is the connection string. So let's try and do that. So as we know, app data is present here. And let's see if the app data is being copied. Yeah, okay, it's got, so I should be copying because it is local and I'll be debugging local. So I'm going to copy it to the output directory. And then for the connection string, I have the app settings.json. If you see, this is the scaffolded version app settings JSON, which has been automatically added during the porting process. I'm not going to use the local SQL Server version, so I'm going to remove that. I'm going to remove this. Here, data source is fine. Yeah, this should match my MDF file name. And that's matching. Just that the directory, I have the app data, so I'm going to make it to app data. Now I think the connection string should also be good. So with these escape characters, let's build it one last time, and then we'll run to see if this has been ported to .NET 5. Yeah, all three succeeded. So let's try and run this. So here it is. Now this particular application is running on .NET 5. So you can run it on Linux. You can run it on, yeah, it depends upon, where you would deployment model would be. That's the beauty of the .NET Core and .NET 5. You can develop on Windows and deploy it on Linux yeah, let's quickly look into the catalogs. If our database connection is working fine, that means that we have ported Entity Framework 6 to Entity Framework Core. Yeah, it is working. And if you remember, we changed the price to 20.99. That is getting reflected correctly. So yes, we have ported it. Yeah, and I see we are about time. So I'll quickly do a recap and then I'll move on to the questions. Okay, so let me go ahead and run this. Yeah, from the recap perspective, .NET Core or .NET 5 is the future. It is open source, cross-platform, lightweight, and performant. And it also helps, if you port your .NET Framework or .NET Core, it will help you to use the cloud-native architectures. But the whole porting process is a bit hard. And to ease it out, we have this tool, which as you have seen, eliminates a lot of manual steps. It creates the CS proj for you. It updates the namespaces. It shows exactly where the error could be for you so that you can assess it. And it can, it guides you through the entire process. You can get started by downloading the tool and installing it, on your local. You can just go to this link, and it has all the download link as well as the documentation for setting up the prerequisites on your local. It's quite simple, very frankly. Now to the question, what the AWS role is and how you can contribute. So the AWS has created this project as an open source. It is continually, evolving. We do have a roadmap published. I know that we are working currently on the IDE extension for Visual Studio, so that all of them is, we have seen as a standalone tool. We will be able to do it integrated within the Visual Studio itself. It is hosted on the GitHub under the license Apache 2.0. Currently, it has 3 projects. The GitHub links are there for all the 3. The first one is the porting assistant for .NET Client, the one that we have looked into. It contains the backend assessment APIs and the project porting code. Makes it easy to interface with the assistant from your own code if you want. Then we have CodeLyzer. It contains the source code analyzer used by the assessment APIs. And the final one is the data store. The repository contains the data sets used in the compatibility assessment. It also has the recommendations folder, all the recommendations that we were showing. It has that folder enabling contributions to the NuGet and API replacement data. So if you see any recommendation is not up to date, or if you see any incorrect data, we welcome all the contributions from the developer community. So yeah, feel free to raise a pull request or engage with us. There is an email ID if you want the support. AWS Porting Assistant Support at Amazon.com. Feel free to send it to it, or connect with me on the LinkedIn. I'll show that my LinkedIn URL on the thank you slide. Feel free to connect with me on the LinkedIn. Any questions? Feel free to send me a message. I'm not on Twitter. I try and keep my social media time less, so I'm just only on LinkedIn. But I'm pretty active, and I just try and respond to every message that I get. Yep. So for that, let's open for any questions and feedback. So this is the LinkedIn profile I was talking about. Just you can search K Prasad and you'll be able to find me. But yeah, let's go to the chat and let me start with the questions. Let's see how many questions do we have. Let me try and expand this a bit so that I'm able to follow them. Can I expand this? Yes, I think I can expand this. Good enough. So as you see, try convert, I have not played with it a lot, but with the porting assistant, you can see the code level changes that are being done. I'm not sure if try convert does that. I'll have to look into it a bit again to see if they have enhanced with the try convert. But with the porting assistant, it goes a step ahead of updating the code for ASP.NET and EF Core sample projects or the projects with the scaffolding boilerplate code. What role does AWS play? As I said, AWS has created this application, but it is open source. It is being actively worked by on AWS, but contributions from all the developer community is more than welcome. Is there an AWS account mandatory? Yes, it is mandatory. And yeah, let me go ahead and show the FAQ page also. That will be actually helpful. So what I'll do is that I'm going to go here and I'm going to go porting assistant for .NET So this is, I'm going to move the question slide to other one, and I'm going to zoom this a bit. So this is the homepage. You can download it from here. You can get started here from here. This is going to take you to the documentation of how to set up the prerequisites. But here is the FAQ, which should be able to answer any questions that you have. The question on, what's the role of AWS is, or what type of, this is a lot that we hear from our, the customers and the developer community, that what kind of telemetry information does the porting system of .NET collect? So to scan your code, we do collect the compatibility information on the public NuGet packages and the APIs within those packages. It does not collect any source code or the information on the private NuGet packages. In case there is a failure, the tool may collect some stack traces to improve the product. But you can always have the option to disable. I'll show the option. You can always go to the settings, edit, and you can disable that. It will not be share any usage data with Porting Assistant for .NET. Okay, let me go back to the questions. Yep, here it is. Can I use the tool? So as of now, it is a standalone tool. As I said, we do have a lot in the roadmap, but as of now, it is a standalone tool. I need to leave. Thank you for organizing this. Great. Thank you, David. I need an AWS name profile to run this tool. Yes, we do need an AWS name profile to run this tool. You can always create an AWS free tier account, and it's just a name profile that can be created. It requires adding a profile, AWS access key and access a secret key. Yes, it does require that. And you can always sign up for a free tier account. How many solutions used in production have been successfully ported, and how would you rate the effort? That's a great question, and this is where I would like to show a customer example. The service team who is working on them, they have the latest stats. But yeah, this is one project that I worked with one of my partners. So in my role, I'm a partner solution architect with AWS, who help their partners, enable the partners on migrating and modernizing Microsoft workloads, .NET applications specifically, onto AWS. So I'm going to show you one case study. Okay. Let me bring that up. Hold on. So this is one of our partner, Kloya, who is very skilled in .NET application modernization. So here it is. And let me, send this link on the chat window if anyone is interested in reading that. And let me bring this down and zoom it a bit. So this is back even when it was recently launched. When we launch, we do have a lot kind of featured partners who use the tool for their live projects that they are working on, partners and customers. So Kloya, one of our a partner, have used this tool to accelerate the EPOS Now API. If you have used any POS systems, you probably would be knowing about EPOS Now. They're leading vendors of the POS systems, of the cloud-based POS systems. So EPOS systems had this problem of they had this legacy application which they had to port within a very tight timeline, and they had to modernize this. And they were considering a lot of porting from .NET Framework, .NET Core. So they engaged this partner, and they used the tool to actually accelerate the porting by many times. You can go through this case study. It's quite in detail how to use the tool and what exactly they have done. As I said, the dependency graph. This is the dependency graph for the EPOS Now, and not revealing any sensitive information. But yeah, we had this. This is the EPOS Now API NuGet packages that they had, and this is the dependency, and this is how they used to plan, assess the effort, and then plan the whole assessment. Hopefully that answers that question. Let's get back to the questions. Okay, I need to expand this, and I need to. Okay, I was here, right? How many solutions good enough? Now, are you sending your source code to AWS for analysis, or is this analysis happening locally? So the source code is not being sent as such, but there are portions that are being required to be sent for the analysis. I can get back to the specifics, with the specifics if required on how exactly it's happening. But yeah, it is there in the FAQ page that what exact information is being shared with AWS. It is mainly on the public NuGet packages side of it and the public API side of it. Is the porting tool available to deal with migration from in inject also Dapper? So this is where, as I said, the code translation feature. Let me go back to that slide of the code translation feature. So we are adding more and more, rules to it. So as of now, it supports. Come on, let me go back to that. Yeah, this is a code translation feature. So this is where it depends upon a set of predefined rules and actions. And we welcome this, this is a very new tool, and we welcome this feedback that what all we should be adding the rules and actions for. And as I said, this is where, you will be able to see all the information of exactly what predefined rules are already supported. These are the ones like ASP.NET MVC and the database part of it, which are the most common and is added. They might, I don't think Dapper is supported yet in that, but yeah, it should be in pipeline. And yeah, as I said, contributions are more than welcome. If you know the, left-hand side, which is the Dapper, or, the old version, right-hand side, which is the newer version in .NET 5, we can add the rules, raise a pull request, it will be reviewed, and we will be happy. Okay, now let's move on to the next question. Okay, seems to be default does not correct IAM policies. So if you are looking into the, let me show that very quickly again then. If I go back to this, and if I go here in the prerequisites, if you see in the get started prerequisites, you need to have this IAM profile. Simple profile, copy paste. Here is a step at how it needs to be done, and we need to attach that policy. And once it is attached, it'll work. Moving on. Are there any other porting tools that do that similar? There are a few, like TryConvert is one of them. There is a portability analyzer by Microsoft themselves, but that does more of assessment than the porting. So yeah, there are few tools, but in my experience, and you can say I am biased, but this is the most advanced tool that is there at this moment. If I wait a year, that's what the end goal is, very frankly. But how achievable it is something that is, depending upon how well the community will start contributing and how fast, we'll be able to reach that stage. Yeah, because obviously almost every company, as I said, I have written a lot of legacy code, or a code which was modern at that time but is called legacy now. At that time probably I thought this is the best architecture that I'm using, but now it is called like monolithic and legacy, and we want to change that also. Yeah, every company I understand has that code, and automatic porting would be an awesome thing to have. That's the end goal. Baby steps, I would say, that we are taking it. Please share your LinkedIn profile. That's my pleasure. I'm going to do that right away. Oh, I was going to.
I've already popped it in the chat there because Sala did it well.
Oh, okay, it's already done. That's great. Good enough. Okay, cool. Good enough. Any experience of porting common trap code? No, man. That's really hard part. Porting assistant as of now, no. manually. It's hard. I've done that in a couple of projects, but yeah, it's a hard part. Yeah, and first of all, like having COM interop for a cross-platform, it depends upon whether you want to do that or you want to think about a different strategy of like having a different application altogether. Does it require internet connection to the AWS account, or does it have an offline functionality? That's a good question. I have not tried it switching off my internet. I think it should be able to do it locally, but the recommendations would not be the latest. I'll have to try it out to answer that. Oh yeah, this is the one that I have. I'm glad you found it informative. I'm more than happy. When was the tool released first? It was back in, I think, July. Yeah, somewhere in July last year. It was June 30th or July 1st. There were two tools that were released. The first tool was called App2 Container. That is going to take your legacy .NET Framework application. Even if you do not have the code, it is going to create the container out of the application. If there is an application which is installed on IIS, the tool is able to hook up to your IIS web server, and it is able to create the container, Windows container, and then you can run those Windows containers on like ECS or Fargate, ECS or EKS in AWS. And the other tool that was more of a re-platforming tool. And this porting assistant for .NET is a more of a refactoring tool, which is like .NET Framework to .NET Core. And the support for .NET 5 was added soon after the release of .NET 5 in November last year. You got experience working with AWS Lambda? Yes, a lot. That's what my day job is. I help my partners and customers ramp up on a lot of serverless. And if the group is interested, I'm happy to arrange another session of getting started with the .NET on AWS Lambda, where I can show how to create a Lambda functions from scratch through the Visual Studio and deploy it to the AWS, the full serverless application end to end through the Visual Studio. Would you be able to deploy a legacy .NET application as a AWS Lambda? So again, if you say it's legacy .NET application, which is in .NET Framework, targeted only for Windows, then no. AWS Lambda only support, as of now, .NET Core or .NET 5. So a straight answer is no. But yeah, if you're able to port it to .NET 5, or in my experience that I work with my customers, on a daily basis, is that the legacy applications are mainly monolithic. So when we start, modernizing those applications, we try and break them into the microservices or the domain services, and then we start looking into the functionality which can be made serverless versus the functionality which is more of a long-running task. So they should be running in containers, whether it is a serverless containers like AWS, like Fargate, and so on and so forth. So for that, let me to just give you a brief, I'll show another case study. That's the best way, which is for GoData So the GoData has similar monolithic application, and we were able to actually modernize it in using AWS Lambda and containers. And if you see the architecture, it uses the step function for orchestration. It's pretty complex, and not that we can go through this right now. You're looking into the time also, but yeah, go through this. I'm going to paste this in the chat window right now. And I minimized it. How am I going to get it back? Okay. Chat. Okay, it's here. So let me paste this case study here. Okay. So as someone who's currently working on moving our classes libraries to .NET Framework 4.8 to .NET Standard, that's great. I know the pain of manually inspecting a large code base and putting it over. Absolutely correct, and try using this tool. Let us know your feedback. As I said, it's fairly new. It's far from automatically porting it 100%. But yeah, any feedback would be more than welcome. Yeah, I'll urge everyone to connect with me on the LinkedIn. I love to hear feedback on the tool, as well as any other .NET modernization. That's what I do. If you're facing any issues, please feel to connect. Let's have that engagement and communication going.
Perfect. Is that all the questions, or am I jumping the gun?
I think that's all the questions. There's one question specifically on a specific use case, so probably we can connect offline on that, Ravi, and how to connect it to a PostgreDB.
Perfect. Are you happy then, Prasad, if we wrap up here?
Yes. I'm sorry for taking more time than allocated.
No, don't apologize at all. I would love to say that I understood all of it. I didn't, but I did. I find it really interesting. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Prasad. Really appreciate your time tonight. The recording will be released next week, so that will be sent out via an email with a survey. If you want to let us know your thoughts, please do, or any kind of suggestions on topics you'd like to hear about, then please do let us know. We'll also post it on the LinkedIn. Our next meetup is on March the 30th, so that's a Tuesday, and that will be with Scott Hunter. He is responsible for the .NET platform, and he will be giving us an overview of the new capabilities in .NET 5. So it follows on quite nicely from tonight's topic. We'll send out the sign-up information as usual. And yeah, like I said, if you do have any topics for speakers, let us know. We've got a few months lined up already, but the second half of the year is looking wide open. So anything that you do want to see us talk about, well, not as specifically, I don't think me and Charlotte could quite do what Prasad's done. But if you do have any ideas, let us know, and everyone have a lovely evening and stay safe.